Commander Vikram Singh had been the human liaison to the collective of rational beings for 5 years, which meant he had spent 5 years explaining why humans did absolutely ridiculous things to aliens who found the concept of ridiculousness itself ridiculous. Today's meeting was already shaping up to be a memorable one, and not in a good way. The conference room was a perfect cube, because the collective believed in efficient geometry. Sitting across from Vikram was Quargle the Efficient, a gelatinous blob of translucent purple who managed to look smug despite having no face. Next to Quargle was Pip, a bird-like alien with iridescent feathers and eyes that blinked sideways, who had been frantically taking notes on a holographic tablet for the past 3 hours. "Commander Singh," Quargle said, their voice emanating from somewhere within their blob body with all the warmth of a tax document. "We have completed our comprehensive analysis of humanity's primary dysfunction." Vikram rubbed his temples. "I'm almost afraid to ask." "Love," Pip chirped, looking up from their notes with genuine concern. "It's love. You're all completely obsessed with it, and it's destroying your productivity." "We've compiled extensive data," Quargle continued, displaying a holographic chart that was frankly insulting in its thoroughness. "Humans lose approximately 30% of their cognitive function when experiencing romantic attachment. Your species starts wars over romantic partners. You write poetry so terrible that our translation algorithms assumed they were error messages. You make catastrophically poor financial decisions based entirely on feelings. One of your governments nearly collapsed last year because 2 diplomats were, and I quote, going through a messy breakup." Vikram wanted to argue, but that last one had actually happened. "Okay, but we have developed a solution," Quargle announced with the triumphant energy of someone who had just organized a very efficient spreadsheet. "The Emotional Optimization Protocol. We call it the EOP. It's a comprehensive cure for love and all associated emotional dysfunctions." The hologram changed to show a swirling cloud of nanobots. Vikram felt his stomach drop. "We've tested it on 17 species across the galaxy," Pip added, still looking worried, despite delivering what the collective clearly thought was good news. "Every single one showed immediate improvement in productivity, conflict resolution, and rational decision-making. We're offering it to humanity as a gift." "A gift," Vikram repeated slowly. "Yes," Quargle said. "We're giving you the opportunity to finally become sensible, productive members of galactic society. You will be able to make decisions based on logic rather than which mating partner makes your cardiac muscle spasm irregularly. That's not exactly how hearts work. The procedure is painless, permanent, and can be administered through atmospheric dispersal," Quargle continued, clearly on a roll. "We've already identified an ideal test site. A small colony world, New Brisbane, 50,000 humans. Perfect sample size." Vikram stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Absolutely not." Pip's feathers ruffled nervously. "Commander, I understand your hesitation, but the data is very clear. Humanity would benefit enormously from having our emotions chemically lobotomized?" Vikram tried to keep his voice level. "Look, I appreciate the sentiment, really, but love isn't just some bug in our programming. It's fundamental to who we are." Quargle rippled in what Vikram had learned to recognize as confusion. "That's exactly the problem. You've built your entire civilization on an irrational foundation. We're simply offering to repair it. We don't need repairing, Commander," Quargle said patiently. "Last month, one of your cargo pilots crashed a shipment of medical supplies into an asteroid because he was, and again I quote, sad about a text message. The supplies were worth 4 million credits. The text message said, 'Do you still love me?' He didn't even respond before crashing. Vikram had to admit that was pretty bad." "Okay, we're not perfect, but you're not even close to perfect," Pip interrupted gently. "I've been studying human behavior for 3 years now. Do you know how many problems would disappear if humans simply stopped making decisions based on feelings? Your crime rate would drop by 40%. Your therapy industry would become obsolete. You could redirect all that emotional energy into something useful." "Like what? Like anything else?" Quargle said. "The collective has voted. We're implementing the EOP trial on New Brisbane. The governor has already agreed. Consider it a humanitarian effort." "That's not what humanitarian means," Vikram said desperately. "The dispersal begins in 72 hours, Quargle announced, already oozing toward the door. "We'll send you the monitoring data. You'll thank us later, Commander. Or you won't, because you won't have the emotional capacity for gratitude. Either way, you'll be better off." Pip lingered behind as Quargle left. For what it's worth, the bird alien said quietly, I think you might be right to worry. But the collective has made their decision, and they're very rarely wrong about these things. There's a first time for everything, Vikram muttered. That's what I'm afraid of, Pip said, and followed Korgal out. Vikram stood alone in the efficient cube of a conference room, staring at the holographic data still floating in the air. Charts and graphs showing exactly how much better humanity would be without love. Without connection. Without the messy, irrational, beautiful thing that made them human in the first place. He had 72 hours to stop this. He had absolutely no idea how. Vikram spent the next 72 hours sending increasingly frantic messages to New Brisbane, to Earth Central Command, to anyone who would listen. The problem was that Governor Marcus Webb, the administrator of New Brisbane, wasn't just willing to participate in the trial. He was enthusiastic about it. Commander Singh, Webb said over the comlink, his face displaying the kind of stern efficiency that suggested he alphabetized his socks. I've reviewed the collective's proposal. It's exactly what this colony needs. Do you have any idea how many work hours we lose to relationship drama? Last month, 2 of our engineers refused to work on the same projects because of a failed dating situation. It's absurd. Governor, you can't just optimize away human emotion. Watch me, Webb said. The collective's data is compelling. 17 species, all improved outcomes. Why should we be the exception? Because we're different, Vikram insisted. Those other species already had social structures based on logic. We don't work that way. Then maybe it's time we learned, Webb said, and terminated the connection. Vikram tried going over Webb's head, but Earth Central Command was, unsurprisingly, tangled in bureaucratic debate. Some officials agreed with Webb, others wanted more research. None of them could stop the trial in time. The collective had been very clever about getting permission from the local authority first. When the 72 hours expired, Vikram watched the live feed from New Brisbane with a growing sense of dread. The dispersal was exactly as promised, painless and invisible. Atmospheric drones released their nanobots across the colony. Within hours, they had integrated with every human nervous system on the planet. Within 48 hours, the emotional optimization was complete. The aliens monitored everything with scientific precision. Korgal set up a command center filled with holographic displays showing real-time data from New Brisbane. Productivity metrics, conflict resolution times, communication efficiency, every single metric was improving. Remarkable, Korgal murmured, watching the numbers climb. Productivity up 34% already. Interpersonal conflicts down 89%. This is exceeding our projections. Pip was reviewing different data, their feathers increasingly ruffled. Korgal, have you noticed the behavioral anomalies? Define anomalies. Humans are stopping. Stopping what? Just stopping, Pip said, pulling up video feeds. Look at this. Subject pauses mid-task for 1.3 minutes. No apparent reason. Here, another one. Standing in a doorway for 4 minutes. This one is staring at a wall. When questioned, they respond with variations of I don't know or what's the point. Korgal rippled dismissively. Minor adjustment period. Their neural pathways are adapting to more efficient processing, completely normal. Is it though? Pip zoomed in on a woman sitting at a desk, her hand frozen over a keyboard. This is Chen Li. Before optimization, she was a novelist. Very productive, emotionally speaking. Now she's written 3 words in 6 hours. The words are perhaps she's being more thoughtful about her word choices. Or perhaps she has no reason to write anymore, Pip said quietly. Vikram arrived at the command center and immediately saw what Pip was seeing. The numbers looked good. The reality looked wrong. He watched a father pick up his child from school, the interaction perfectly polite and completely hollow. He watched a restaurant full of people eating in absolute silence. He watched a young couple pass each other on the street without acknowledgement, even though their shared apartment was listed in the colony records. This is what you wanted? Vikram asked Korgal. The data indicates success, Korgal responded. The data is lying to you. Look at their faces. Facial expressions are an inefficient communication method. They're better off without them. Vikram pulled up the poetry production statistics. Before the optimization, New Brisbane had 17 amateur poets. They'd produced approximately 43 poems per week, most of them terrible. The poetry production rate was now 0. See, Korgal said, no more terrible poetry. That's a clear improvement. They're not writing because they have nothing to say, Vikram said. They're not feeling anything worth writing about. Exactly. Think of how much time they're saving. Vikram wanted to put his fist through the holographic display. But that would be pointless and probably prove Korgol's thesis about humans making poor decisions based on emotions. Instead, he pulled up the productivity data again and started digging deeper. Pip, can you break down the productivity increase by sector? Pip's talons flew across the haptic interface. The data reformed, showing a more granular view. The productivity increase wasn't evenly distributed. Manual labor tasks were up. Data entry was up, routine maintenance was up. But creative tasks were down. Problem solving was down. Innovation was down. They're doing exactly what they're told, Vikram said slowly. Nothing more, nothing less. No one's taking initiative. No one's improving processes. They're just going through the motions. That's not a problem, Korgol said. That's efficiency. That's death, Vikram said. You just can't see it yet. He was right. 3 days later, the first person in New Brisbane stopped eating. When asked why, they shrugged and said, "Why bother?" Week 3 post-optimization, and New Brisbane was unraveling in slow motion. The baker, a man named Thomas Park, who had run the colony's most popular cafe, still showed up to work every day. He still made bread, but the bread was different now. Perfectly adequate, exactly to specifications. No more experimental sourdoughs. No more cinnamon rolls that he made just because he liked seeing people smile when they bit into them. When a customer asked why he'd stopped making the good stuff, Thomas stared at them blankly and said, "This is more efficient." The customer didn't argue. They'd been optimized too. Across the colony, similar patterns emerged. A teacher named Rodriguez still taught his classes, but he no longer answered questions beyond the curriculum. When a student asked him to explain something in a different way, he said, "The textbook explanation is sufficient." The students stopped asking questions after that. They stopped asking anything. A maintenance worker named Hassan completed his required inspections, but stopped fixing things that were untechnically broken yet. A loose railing that would have failed in a month? Not on the maintenance schedule. A water filter running at 85% efficiency? Still within acceptable parameters. When his supervisor asked about it, Hassan said, "I'm doing my job," and he was. Exactly his job, nothing more. Governor Webb reported to the collective daily. Every report was the same. Everything is acceptable. His voice was flat. His face was blank. He didn't seem to notice that his colony was dying around him. Vikram watched the feeds obsessively. He saw the empty streets, the silent cafeterias. The children who went to school, absorbed information, and never played during recess. They just stood there, waiting for someone to tell them what to do next. Then the deaths started. Not violent deaths, not disease. People simply stopped maintaining themselves. They stopped eating because it was effort without reward. They stopped drinking because they forgot to care. When medical teams intervened, force-feeding patients, keeping them hydrated, the patients asked the most haunting question: why? The medical staff, themselves optimized, couldn't provide an answer that satisfied. Because you need nutrients to survive was uncompelling to someone who no longer cared about surviving. The death toll climbed 50, 100, 500, 1,000. Pip finally forced Korgol to look at the morgue data. "This is unexpected," Korgol admitted, which was the closest thing to panic Vikram had ever heard from them. "This is a catastrophe," Pip said, their voice shrill. "Korgol, I've been running comparisons with the 17 other species we optimized. Every single one of them had existing social structures based on logic, efficiency, collective purpose. Their societies were already built on rational foundations. We just enhanced what was already there. And humans aren't like that," Pip said desperately. "Look at their history. Every human achievement, every bit of progress, it all stems from irrational emotional bonds. They explore space because they love discovery. They create art because it makes them feel something. They build communities because they care about each other. We didn't optimize them. We deleted their entire operating system." Korgol rippled slowly, processing this. "That's not possible. The EOP is scientifically sound." We tested it on the wrong species," Vikram said. He'd been standing in the doorway, listening. "You tested it on aliens who think like you. Humans don't think like you. We think with our hearts first and our heads second. And yeah, that makes us messy and inefficient and ridiculous, but it's what makes us us. You didn't cure us. You gutted us. The data from the other species doesn't apply here, Pip interrupted. I've been running probability models. If we extend the EOP to all of humanity as originally planned, the species will be functionally extinct within 18 months. Not from violence, not from disease. From sheer lack of interest in continuing to exist, the command center went very quiet. We need to convene the collective council, Korgel said finally. We need to fix this, Vikram said. The EOP is irreversible. Then we figure out something else, Vikram said. Because I am not watching my entire species slowly choose death because you thought you were helping us. Korgel stared at him as much as a blob could stare. You're still experiencing anger. That's interesting. I wasn't on New Brisbane when you deployed the EOP, Vikram said coldly. I still have my emotions. Lucky me. I get to feel exactly how catastrophically you've screwed this up. By week 6, the death toll hit 3,000. The collective council finally agreed to investigate in person. They were logical beings after all, and the logic was clear. Something had gone very, very wrong. They just didn't understand what yet. Vikram did. He understood perfectly. You couldn't take love away from humans and expect them to keep going. Love wasn't optional for humanity. It was the fuel. And the collective had drained the tank and expected the car to keep running. Chen Li was in the hospital again. She'd stopped eating, stopped drinking. Her body was failing, but there was nothing wrong with her. Nothing the doctors could fix with medicine. Give me one good reason not to, she said when Vikram asked her why she was giving up. He opened his mouth, closed it. What could he say to someone who couldn't feel anything? What logical argument could convince someone to live when living felt like nothing? He couldn't answer her. And that was the moment Vikram realized they were all running out of time. The delegation from the collective arrived on New Brisbane 6 weeks after the optimization, and what they found broke through even their logical facades. Korgel oozed through the streets of the main settlement, Pip flying overhead, with representatives from 7 other collective species trailing behind. Vikram walked with them, watching their reactions. He'd seen it all before. They hadn't. The streets were pristine. Every surface cleaned to regulation standards. Every building maintained to minimum specifications. But there was no graffiti. No litter. No signs of life beyond the bare minimum. A human child's drawing on a wall would have been a violation of cleanliness protocols, but it also would have been evidence that someone cared enough to draw. No one did. They passed a playground. The equipment was maintained perfectly, empty. It was 3 in the afternoon on a school day, and somewhere nearby, children had been released for recess. But no one played. Vikram watched through a school window as 20 kids stood in the courtyard, waiting. Just waiting. When recess ended, they filed back inside with the same blank efficiency. Where's the chaos? Asked a crystalline being named Flux, their voice chiming with confusion. Human children are supposed to be chaotic. I've read the reports, extremely loud, unnecessarily energetic. These ones are just standing. They're conserving energy, Korgel said, but even they sounded uncertain now. They entered a residential building. Apartments were clean, organized, depressing. A couple lived in Unit 447, Marcus and Patricia Okonkwo, married for 12 years. They sat in the same room, Marcus reading a technical manual, Patricia organizing data on a tablet. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. When the delegation asked how they were doing, Marcus said, "Functioning within normal parameters." "When's the last time you touched your wife?" Vikram asked. Marcus looked confused by the question. Physical contact outside of necessary circumstances is inefficient. She's your wife. Yes, we cohabitate efficiently. Patricia didn't even look up from her tablet. The hospital was worse. Chen Li was still there, and she wasn't alone anymore. An entire ward full of people who had simply stopped trying. Their bodies functioned. Their minds worked. But something essential was missing, and without it they were choosing not to continue. A doctor named Yamamoto tried to explain to Korgel. There's nothing medically wrong with them. We've run every test. They're just not interested in living anymore. We can force feed them, keep them hydrated, but we can't make them want to survive. That has to come from them, and there's nothing there to want it with. They stood around Chen Li's bed. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. When Korgel asked her to describe her symptoms, she said, "I don't feel anything. Not pain, not sadness, not anything. It's like the world is behind glass. I can see it, but I can't touch it. And if I can't touch it, why bother reaching? But you're alive, Korgel said. Am I? Chun-Li asked. Or am I just a biological process that hasn't stopped yet? Pip made a distressed chirping sound. She's right. They're all right. We didn't cure them. We turned them into biological automatons who can't remember why they're running. They visited a restaurant next. 60 people eating lunch in complete silence. The food was nutritionally balanced. The portions were correct. Everyone chewed and swallowed with mechanical precision. No one spoke. No one laughed. When someone spilled water, they cleaned it up without emotion and continued eating. Before optimization, Vikram had watched videos of this same restaurant. It had been loud, chaotic, people talking over each other, laughing, arguing, living. It had been everything the collective hated about human inefficiency. It had been beautiful. I think I understand now, Korgel said quietly. Do you? Vikram asked. We didn't account for the foundation, Korgel said. We saw love as a dysfunction, but for humans, it's structural. You built everything on it, your families, your friendships, your purpose. We removed the foundation and expected the building to stand. Worse than that, Flux chimed in, their crystalline body pulsing with light as they processed data. I've been running probability models. If we expand the EOP to Earth as planned, 92% of humanity will be extinct within 1 standard year. Not from violence. Not from disease, from choosing not to continue. The species will die because it has no reason to live. The delegation stood in the silent restaurant, watching humans mechanically consume nutrition, and finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. Can we reverse it? Pip asked desperately. The neurochemistry is permanently altered, Korgel said. We can't restore what we deleted. Then what do we do? Everyone looked at Vikram. He was the human expert, after all. The one who'd been trying to explain his species for 5 years. The one who'd warned them this was a terrible idea. We remind them, Vikram said. Remind them of what? Why love matters, Vikram said. We can't make them feel it, but maybe we can make them remember it. And maybe, if they remember hard enough, they'll choose to care anyway. That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard, Korgel said. Yeah, Vikram agreed, but stupid is kind of our specialty. And it's gotten us this far. The emergency session of the Collective Council took 47 minutes, which was 17 minutes longer than their previous longest deliberation on record. They were debating something they rarely had to face, being wrong. The data is irrefutable, Korgel said to the assembled representatives. We have created an extinction-level event disguised as a medical treatment. The emotional optimization protocol is not compatible with human neurology or human society. We must take immediate corrective action. What corrective action? Asked a methane-breathing delegate through their translation unit. You said the changes are permanent. They are, Flux chimed in, their crystalline structure glowing with urgency. We can't reverse the neurochemical deletions. But Commander Singh has proposed an alternative approach. It's not logical. It might not work. But it's the only option that doesn't result in humanity's extinction. All eyes, sensors, and various alien perception organs turned to Vikram. You want to try to teach them to care again, said a fungal delegate skeptically. Without the biological mechanisms that create caring. Humans are stubborn, Vikram said. We're really good at doing things we're not supposed to be able to do. We went to space on chemical rockets. We survived ice ages with nothing but pointy sticks and attitude. We made peace between groups that had been killing each other for centuries. We do impossible things because we decide they're worth doing. Maybe we can decide love is worth doing even without the feelings that usually drive it. That's insane, said the methane breather. Completely illogical, agreed Korgel. Very stupid, Pip added. Yeah, Vikram said, but we're human. Stupid is our brand. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. They would attempt to remind humanity of what they'd lost, and hope that stubbornness could bridge the gap where neurotransmitters used to be. The plan, such as it was, started immediately on New Brisbane. They began with families. The optimization hadn't erased memories, just the emotional responses to them. So they brought families together and made them remember. Photo albums, videos, stories. A mother and daughter sat together watching a video of the daughter's 5th birthday party, the mother's face blank as she watched herself crying happy tears at her child blowing out candles. Why was I crying? The mother asked. Because you loved her, Vikram explained. because seeing her happy made you happy, because that moment mattered to you more than anything else in the world. I don't feel that now. I know. But you can choose to act like it matters anyway. You can choose to care because caring is what mothers do, even if it doesn't make sense anymore. The mother looked at her daughter, who was staring blankly at the screen. That seems inefficient. It is, Vikram agreed. Do it anyway. They flooded the colony with music. Every speaker played songs that had made humans feel things. Love songs. Breakup songs. Songs of triumph and loss and hope and despair. The optimized humans were confused by it. Music was just organized sound. Why did it used to make them cry? But some of them remembered crying. And a few of them, just a few, decided to try caring that the music existed, even if it didn't move them anymore. Art appeared on every public screen. The Mona Lisa, Starry Night, Guernica, Jackson Pollock's chaotic splatters. Digital works from the 22nd century, graffiti from Earth's streets. They showed the colonists what humans created when they felt things, and asked them to consider why anyone would spend time making something that served no practical purpose. Because it mattered, Vikram said over and over. Because humans don't just survive, we live. And living means making things and loving things and caring about things for no good reason except that we decided to. Stories were the most effective. They brought in Chen Li, still weak from her hospital stay, and showed her her own novels. They made her read passages aloud, descriptions of love and loss and connection that she'd written before optimization. I wrote this? She asked. Yes, it's very impractical. These characters make terrible decisions based on feelings. That's the point, Vikram said. You wrote about people who chose each other over logic, who sacrificed efficiency for connection. You understood something then that you can't feel now, but maybe you can choose to understand it anyway. Chun Li stared at her own words for a long time. Then she said something that gave Vikram hope. If I wrote this, then caring about impractical things must be important. Even if I can't remember why, can you choose to write again? Vikram asked. I don't know. But I can try. It wasn't love, not technically. The neurochemistry was still gone, but something started to shift. Humans began choosing to care, not because they felt compelled to, but because they remembered that caring was what humans did. It was their identity, their brand. Their stupid, inefficient, beautiful way of existing. A father who couldn't feel love for his son started reading bedtime stories anyway, because fathers do that. The stories didn't make him feel warm inside, but he chose to act as if they did. A teacher who couldn't feel pride in her students started celebrating their achievements anyway, because teachers do that. The celebrations felt hollow, but she chose to make them happen. The baker started making cinnamon rolls again. Not because he loved baking, but because he remembered that he used to, and that identity mattered to him. It was slow, painfully slow. And it didn't work for everyone. Some people were too far gone, too comfortable in the emotional void to climb back out. But enough people started trying. Enough people chose to be human, even without the feelings that usually made them human. Chun Li wrote 3 pages in a day, then 5, then 10. The quality wasn't the same, but the words existed again. She was choosing to create, to add something to the world that served no practical purpose except that she decided it was worth doing. This is the most ridiculous solution to a problem I've ever witnessed, Korgel said, watching the data shift. The death rate was dropping. Not fast, but noticeably. People were choosing to eat, choosing to maintain themselves, choosing to live, not because life felt good, but because they decided life was worth having. It's very human, Pip said, sounding almost proud. Completely illogical, entirely impractical. But it's working. They're running on sheer stubbornness, Flux observed. They're choosing to care because giving up would be boring. I've never seen any species do this. That's because you've never met humans before you broke them, Vikram said. We're really good at refusing to quit, even when quitting makes sense. Especially them, actually. The collective watched in fascination as New Brisbane slowly, impossibly, came back to life. Not the same life as before. Something different. Something harder won. But life nonetheless. And they learned a lesson that would reshape their understanding of intelligent species forever. Some civilizations run on logic, and some run on love, and you can't convert one to the other without destroying what made them worth saving in the first place. 3 months after the crisis began, New Brisbane had stabilized into something no one had predicted. The death rate had returned to normal levels. People were choosing to live, making the decision daily to continue existing even without the chemical reward systems that usually made existence appealing. It was like running a marathon without endorphins, exhausting and pointless, except for the sheer determination to finish anyway. Thomas Park's cafe was open again. The cinnamon rolls weren't quite as good as they used to be, something missing in the love that went into making them, but they existed. People bought them. Some even claimed to enjoy them, though enjoyment was a complicated word now. They chose to act as if they enjoyed them, which was close enough. The school's playground had noise during recess now. Not the chaotic joy of before, but manufactured play. Children who had been taught that playing was part of childhood development and chose to do it, even though it felt like completing a homework assignment. They ran and climbed and swung on swings because that's what children were supposed to do, and they were determined to be children correctly. Chun-Li was writing again. A new novel about a colony that lost its ability to feel and had to decide whether existing without emotion was existence at all. It wasn't fun to write. But she wrote it anyway, choosing to create because creators create, and that's who she had decided she was. The collective officially banned the emotional optimization protocol for human use in a unanimous vote that took less than 5 minutes. They issued a formal apology to Earth, to New Brisbane, and to humanity in general. The apology was delivered by Korgal in person to Vikram's office. "We made an error," Korgal said, which were possibly the hardest words they'd ever spoken. "We assumed that efficiency was universal, that optimization would be welcome, that love was a dysfunction rather than a feature. We were wrong about all of it." "Yeah," Vikram said. "You really were. How do humans forgive?" Korgal asked. "I've been studying your forgiveness mechanisms. They seem to involve emotional processing that New Brisbane residents no longer have. They choose to forgive anyway," Vikram said. "Or they don't. Both are valid. But most of them will probably forgive you eventually. Because holding grudges is exhausting. And they're already exhausted from having to choose to care about everything manually. That seems very difficult." "Being human is difficult," Vikram said. "It was difficult before you optimized them, and it's harder now. But they're doing it anyway, because that's what we do. We make things harder for ourselves and then complain about it and keep going. It's our whole thing." Pip had written an academic paper titled, "Why Humans Are Terrible and That S Actually Fine," that was already required reading in xenobiology programs across the collective. The abstract began with, "Human beings are a species that runs on irrational emotional bonds rather than logical social structures. This appears to be a massive evolutionary disadvantage. It is not. This paper explores why some species need love to function and why attempting to optimize them without it results in existential collapse." The paper was 300 pages long. Page 147 contained a single sentence. "Do not try to fix humans. They are already broken in exactly the right way." Vikram kept that page printed on his wall. Governor Webb had been removed from office. Not as punishment, but because he kept reporting that everything was acceptable when it clearly wasn't. He didn't seem to mind. He'd taken a job as a data analyst, something that required no emotional investment and seemed content. Or as content as anyone could seem without the neurochemistry for contentment. The question of what to do about New Brisbane long-term was still unanswered. The EOP was permanent. The affected colonists would spend the rest of their lives choosing to care about things, without the feelings that make caring automatic. It was like breathing manually, conscious effort for something that should be autonomic. "They're heroes," Pip said during one of their regular check-ins. "Every single one of them. They're choosing humanity every day when it would be easier to just stop." "That's remarkable." "They're stubborn," Vikram corrected. "And terrified of being boring. Humans can't stand the idea of being forgettable. Is there a difference?" "Probably not." Earth Central Command had sent therapists, support staff, and a whole department of researchers trying to understand how humans were managing to maintain identity without emotion. The early findings suggested that humans had a concept of self that was more resilient than their feelings. A core identity that persisted even when the chemicals that usually reinforced it were gone. Or maybe they were just too stubborn to let a bunch of well-meaning aliens tell them who they were allowed to be. Vikram returned to his desk after walking Korgal out. There was already another message from the collective waiting for him. His heart sank before he even opened it. "We've been studying human sleep patterns," the message began. "We've noticed significant inefficiencies. We believe we can optimize human sleep to require only 3 hours per night instead of 8. This would increase productivity by nearly 30%. We've developed a protocol and would like to begin trials on a volunteer basis. Vikram stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed a response, short and simple. Thanks, but we'll figure it out ourselves. We're good at doing things the hard way. He sent it before they could argue. Then he added a second message. And just so we re-clear, no more optimizing humans. Ever. For anything. We're a mess. We know we're a mess. We like being a mess. It's our thing. Leave us alone. The response came back in 30 seconds. Just 2 words from Korgal. Understood, Commander. Vikram leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the collective station, a marvel of efficient engineering and logical design. Beautiful in its own way. Just not human. His console pinged again. This time it was a personal message from Chen Li on New Brisbane. He opened it, half expecting another crisis. Instead it was a single line. I finished chapter 12. It doesn't make me happy, but I'm proud anyway. Figure that out, collective. Vikram smiled. That was the thing about humans. You could take away their neurochemistry, their emotional responses, their ability to feel joy or love or connection, but you couldn't take away their spite. Their determination to be themselves out of pure stubbornness. Their refusal to be anything other than human, even when being human was the hardest thing in the universe. On New Brisbane, Chun-Li walked out of her apartment for the first time in weeks. The sun didn't feel warm. The breeze didn't feel refreshing. But she walked anyway because people walk, and she was still people, damn it. She passed the park where children were mechanically playing, their laughter forced but present. She passed Thomas's cafe, where the smell of cinnamon rolls didn't trigger any emotional response but existed nonetheless. She didn't feel joy at being alive. She didn't feel grateful or happy or any of the things that usually made life worth living. She simply chose to be alive anyway because giving up would be boring. And if there was one thing Chen-Li absolutely refused to be, it was boring. She stopped at the cafe and ordered a cinnamon roll, not because she wanted one, but because this is what she used to do. Thomas handed it to her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes because the neural pathways for smile satisfaction were gone. But he smiled anyway because bakers smile at customers, and he was determined to be a baker correctly. Good to see you up and about, he said. Chun-Li asked. Not rudely, just genuinely curious. Could he actually feel good about seeing her? No, Thomas admitted. But I remember that I should feel good about it, so I'm acting like I do. Close enough. Close enough, Chun-Li agreed. She took the cinnamon roll and walked to the park, sitting on a bench that she used to love because it had a good view of the sunset. She didn't feel anything looking at the sunset now. But she ate the cinnamon roll and watched the sky change colors anyway because this is what humans did. They found beauty in things for no practical reason. They created meaning where none existed. They cared about sunsets and cinnamon rolls in each other, even when the universe gave them no logical reason to. Especially then. The collective watched all of this through their monitoring systems, trying to understand. Korgal spent hours reviewing the data, looking for the mechanism that allowed humans to function without their emotional core. There wasn't one. Humans were just choosing to function anyway, brute-forcing their way through existence on nothing but identity and stubbornness. They're extraordinary, Pip said, watching Chen-Li sit alone on her bench, forcing herself to appreciate a sunset she couldn't feel. Completely irrational. Entirely impractical. But extraordinary. They're still broken, Korgal observed. No, Pip corrected gently. They're still human. We're the ones who didn't understand the difference. Back on the collective station, Vikram filed his daily report. 3 months post-crisis. New Brisbane stable. Death rate normal. Population choosing to maintain existence through sheer determination. Prognosis. Humans will continue being weird and difficult and refusing to give up because that's what humans do. He added a final note to his report, one he knew would be read by the council and archived in the collective's historical records. Recommendation for future interactions with humanity: stop trying to help us. We're not broken. We're not malfunctioning. We're exactly what we're supposed to be. And what we're supposed to be is messy, emotional, irrational, and absolutely refusing to quit no matter how much sense quitting makes. You can't fix that. You can't optimize it. You can only accept it or leave us alone. We vote for acceptance, but we'll take either. 3 days later, the collective council voted to establish a new protocol for human interaction. It was simple: observe, assist when requested, but never attempt to fundamentally alter human nature again. Some species ran on logic. Humans ran on something else, something the collective couldn't measure or quantify or understand. And that was okay. Not efficient. Not optimal, but okay. On New Brisbane, Chun-Li finished her novel 6 months after the crisis began. It was 80,000 words about people learning to be human without the feelings that usually made them human. It was exhausting to read and probably wouldn't sell well. She published it anyway because writers write, and she decided she was a writer. The dedication page read, "To everyone who chose to care when they had no reason to. You're all absolutely ridiculous. Thank you." And in the margins of the collective's official records, in a note that Pip added when no one was looking, there was a single line that would puzzle xenobiologists for generations. Humans run on love even when they don't have any. Especially then, we still don't understand how. Maybe we're not supposed to. The galaxy learned its lesson. Never try to fix humanity. They were already broken in exactly the right way. Broken in a way that let them survive without the things they needed most. Broken in a way that made them choose to be human even when being human was the hardest possible option. Broken in a way that meant they'd never quit, never give up, never stop being the most frustratingly wonderful species in the galaxy. And somewhere on New Brisbane, on a bench with a good view of the sunset, Chun-Li chose to smile at the sky. Not because it made her happy, but because humans smile at beautiful things, and she was still human, damn it. Even if she had to do it the hard way.